And welcome back to the channel of nonsense. This is the new Dacia Duster, and I think it's one of those cars that's a bit like one of those classic Casio digital watches. It's so simple, so pure and so inexpensive that it's kind of cool. But is this any good, this new Duster? Let's go for a drive, do a walk around review and find out in our best Romanian accents. It's not my best. I used to work for a Romanian girl and she was terrifying. Do you know what isn't terrifying though? The price of the new Dacia Duster. It starts from £14,295, which is like half the price of a decently spec'd Skoda Karoq. This one is a top spec prestige model, so this is actually £21,000 for a Dacia. It's got a 6-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox, which is hardly very Dacia, is it? There are two options on this car. £600 of metallic paint. If you don't want to pay extra for paint on a Duster, you're going to have a UN spec white one, and £250 of an actual honest-to-God spare wheel. When did we last see one of those on a new car? Like, never. Now, in terms of engines, this has the 150 petrol, so it's 150 horsepower from a 1.3 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, and you can only get this engine, this top-spec petrol, with an automatic gearbox. All of these are front-wheel drive, unless you go for the top-spec 21 grand blue DCI 115 diesel, which has a manual gearbox. So if you want a 4-wheel drive, you have to go diesel. Now, like the new Sandero that I reviewed earlier this year, there's also a bi-fuel version, which means it's got fuel tanks for petrol and LPG. So you can travel approximately 2.4 million miles before refueling it. And if you look at the price of LPG at the moment, it's 69 pence per litre here in the UK. It's December 2021. Petrol is currently 147 pence per litre, so yeah, it's a lot cheaper if you want that. But if you do get the LPG one, you can't drive it on the Channel Tunnel. Let's talk about the looks. It still looks like a Duster. It's still chunky looking. I love this blue colour. It's got new headlight signatures in there and tail light signatures as well, which just make it look a bit more posh and a little bit more modern. And because this is a top spec one, you get body coloured door handles. Isn't that fancy? You also get silver mirror caps. I think Audi only does that on their Fast S models. Dacia does it on the Duster, mate. This prestige one also gets fancier 17-inch alloy wheels, and look at these silver roof rails as well. That's all very nice, and you can actually replace this whip antenna for a more sexy aerodynamic shark-like one for £166. This is the back of it. Looks a little bit more modern around the tail lights, I think. They just look a little bit sharper. And the boot, we should talk about the boot, which is going to be too dark. The boot is a 445 litre space, which is pretty big. If you go 4x4, it's only 415 litres, and it goes down to 376 litres with a spare wheel like this one has. Yeah, there's the spare wheel under the car there. That's why the boot is quite a bit smaller when you get the spare wheel, because they raise the floor. Anyway, let's have a look at the back seats. Now, there's a few things to mention about the back seats before I hop in. The first is that you get this different contrast stitching on the seats with the Prestige model, and the second one is you get a couple of USB sockets down there. You don't get USBs in the back of a Kia Ceed, which is a bit ridiculous. But anyway, I'm going to hop in and see if I fit. Yep, I fit really quite nicely in here. That's in my driving position. I've got a little bit of room there, but it's so squishy it doesn't really matter. There's a little map pocket down there. Acres of headroom. Nice big windows, electric windows on this one as well. So yeah, this is a really comfortable thing for two passengers in the back. And obviously you've got Isofix for child seats as well. The middle seat is a bit narrow, and the seatbelt things will probably dig into your bum a bit if you sit there, but otherwise it's pretty decent in here, and the floor in the middle is quite flat. There's not much of a central tunnel down there, so yeah, good family vehicle this. Right, let's look up front, whatever Romanian for front is. That way. Actually, before we go up front, I should point out that all of the windows have Renault on them, just in case you wondered who owns Dacia, and all of these plastics down here are really hard, but this is a cheap car. It's a Dacia. You knew that, right? Anyway, let's prod around up here and let me turn it on. Up front in the Duster, things are a little bit more modern than you might expect, but still it's kind of a sea of grey hard plastic across the front there. You get this deeply unsexy steering wheel, which has cruise control buttons on it and little uppy downy buttons here to change through the settings there. You can see I've been averaging 41 mpg. Current MPG, 385 mile range. I've basically driven a couple of hundred miles in this, and the petrol tank has basically not been touched according to this. You've got the mirror adjuster over there. The big news for me though is that look at this. You get this little 8-inch touchscreen which has wireless Apple CarPlay, so I can play all my music wirelessly, use my maps wirelessly, and just basically do everything on my phone rather than using the built-in stuff, which is actually fine. I've used all that stuff and it's all right. I'm just amazed that you get wireless Apple CarPlay in such an inexpensive car. They've really spent the money wisely on this, and you get buttons here for the reversing camera. That's because this is a top spec one. You get parking sensors, I think, on the mid spec and upwards. But also, look at these, the aircon controls. You've got a screen in the middle of the dial, like on an Audi TT, which is just ridiculous. I think the TT was the first car to do this back in, what, 2013, 2014? So yeah, it's pretty cool to see these sexy dials on a Dacia. And you've got two more USBs down there, a 12 volt there, little mat there. This is the key, which I don't really like. It's a Renault Group flat plastic thing. I don't know why I don't like these, but I just prefer chunkier keys. That's the automatic gear knob for this, and I've got a manual handbrake, cup holders, and you're not going to be able to see this, but there's another deep cubby there. One other surprising thing about the Duster is that the manual gearbox mode is the right way round, so you pull back to go up, like in a Porsche. I think Porsche is basically the only company that still largely does this the right way round. Maybe BMW still does, but most companies get it the wrong way round where you have to push away to change up, but that's a very nerdy thing. Speaking of nerdy things, here I am again, sorry it's my face. Let's go and drive the Dacia Duster and see if it's any good. Now I want to go for a drive in my Dacia Duster that I've just bought, but there is one problem. The pedals, the brake pedal and the accelerator in the case of this automatic one, they're offset to the right. So in the middle of the steering wheel is kind of here, and the brake pedal is kind of in line with the middle of the steering wheel, and then the accelerator is all the way over to the right, and there's nowhere really for my left foot. So it's all, you sit a bit crooked, which is just not great. But anyway, foot on the brake, and it fires into life with this magnificent V12, no, sorry, the other thing. It just grumbles into life. Slightly cheap feeling gear knob back into D. And I would say one thing about this gear knob, it's quite hard to get into reverse because you always just go all the way through reverse to park because it's not very notchy. But anyway, manual handbrake, and off we go. And it's a dual clutch gearbox. It kind of does a decent job, the gearbox. It sometimes hunts around a bit and lets the engine rev a bit more than perhaps it should. I've made this way too warm doing my Audi TT knob bit. But yes, driving position is nice and high at least. You feel like you're in an SUV, but it's not intimidatingly wide. It's just usefully high. I can see over the hedges and see all the shrews that I'm about to eviscerate when I go off-road. No, I'm not going to go off-road. This is a two-wheel drive one, but I have it on good authority that the diesel four-wheel drive one of these is really quite good. And the handbrake's nice and tight as well if you ever need to do an emergency sideways stop with it in an empty car park. But yeah, practical things. You've got big door mirrors, which are easy to adjust using the knob down here. View out the back is perfect. It's a big rectangular window, and it's got decent rear quarter lights, so you can see through the C-pillars. And it's actually just a very easy car to live with. What I would say is the throttle response can sometimes be a bit delayed, and it does sound a bit diesely for a petrol. This one will do 0 to 60 in 9.7, I think, which is quite slow considering it is the most powerful 150 horsepower one. I would just accept you're not going to have a quick Duster, save some money and get the regular 130 horsepower petrol. That's manual gearbox only though, so if you do want an automatic, you have to go for this one. I would just go manual personally, but I know not everyone likes driving manuals. Otherwise, it's okay. It's just annoying that my left calf muscle has to rest on that bit of plastic all the whole time I'm driving. It's a little bit annoying. Right, anyway, I'm about to get up some dual carriageways, and I'll talk about refinement, and then I'll go on some twisty roads and see if it makes me feel sick. There's a car coming the other way. I'm going to go off-road to let him pass because I'm a hero. Please don't get stuck. I didn't get stuck. Just. Something's loose in the back. Right, I'm about to go from a 50 limit onto a dual carriageway, 70 miles an hour, which is the UK motorway speed limit. Can a Dacia Duster do 70 miles an hour? Well, let's find out. That car's turning off there. It's quite roly-poly, the suspension this. It's quite soft. And you lean a fair bit in corners. Feels quite old-fashioned, but I quite like that. It's got a sort of almost French feel to it, which makes it feel like it'd be a good off-roady, utilitarian, dog-walking, muddy car that you don't care about. But anyway, that is 70 miles an hour. It's reasonably quiet, I guess. I've got wind noise from that mirror, but it's not deafening. Other than that, it's fairly average, to be fair. I've driven more expensive cars that are noisier inside than this. The steering in the new Duster was updated when they did the facelift this year. Or they called it a new one, but really it was just a facelift. And yeah, I mean, it's not awful, this steering. It's kind of quite a few turns lock to lock. Kind of does what you want it to, just. It's got a slightly old schooly G-Wagon feel about it at lower speeds, but it's okay. What else can I tell you, really? On the motorway, the ride it's a bit busy. That is to say, you can feel the bumps in the road, but they're not uncomfortable. It's just you can sense the suspension working and you kind of hear it working underneath you. Around town, the ride is firmer than you would think in this. It's not quite the luxurious blancmange that you would like it to be. It's no 2CV. But anyway, that's probably enough of this. Let's go on to Twisty Road and see if I can have any fun in it. Because that's why you buy Dacia Dusters, to have fun. Right, I'm about to get to my Twisty Road in the Dacia Duster, and because this is a pure performance vehicle, I'm going to launch it into a 60 limit, see how long it really takes to get to 60. Now, I'm in Sport Plus, I'm in rear wheel drive mode, I've got M dynamic mode activated, I've got none of that, I'm just going to floor it. 40 miles an hour, 50. 60, that's not actually that slow. I know I was taking the piss a bit there. Might have heard though, that engine is pretty thrashy, up at high revs, and you can hear it a fair bit. It's not a particularly pleasant thing when the gearbox decides to kick down more gears than it should, because you get deafened. Right, let's turn it into a corner, and yeah, you roll out of your seat a little bit. But the thing is, I actually quite enjoy driving this quickly. There's something about having that much body roll, being in an upright driving position, having reasonably accurate steering that just makes this more fun than you would think to drive quickly-ish. It's not got a huge amount of grip, but it's got enough to do 6 miles an hour down a twisty road in the wet without, well, wetting yourself, frankly. Suspension gets a little bit less uncomfortable at high speeds. It sorts itself out a bit. And the brakes are pretty good as well. I mean, you can't get it to really kind of go sideways. Why am I saying that in a review about Dacia Duster? But I mean, it's got its own character. Let's put it that way. It's got its kind of slightly soft, podgy character. It's a bit like your uncle that's eaten too much at Christmas, and then he goes to run his first park run of the new year and he's all over the place a little bit. But yeah, certainly feels safe. It's grippy and it does what you want it to do as a car, frankly. And it's got decent brakes, it feels safe. I've said that twice now, it definitely feels safe. So yeah, I'd recommend it, but I would probably, as I said, save some money and just get the manual one, because I don't need 150 horsepower, it's going to be slow anyway, so just accept it. Right, more than enough waffle about how the Dacia Duster drives. If you've got any problems with how I've been saying Dacia, then go and speak to a Romanian person, and I'll see you in a minute for an outro. Right, that's the end of my review of the Dacia Duster, and in conclusion, I'm pretty impressed by it, to be fair. It is a bit roly-poly, it's a bit soft, it does feel cheap, but hey, guess what? It is cheap, unless you go for one of these top-spec versions. The biggest grievance I have is that twisted driving position. It's just not very comfortable for me, at least after an hour or two. But really, you can't go wrong. This much car for this money is ridiculous, frankly, and I quite like the look of it. I think it's got all the modern tech you really need. Very impressed. I'd give it 8 out of 10. Anyway, there's a train over there, so I'm going to go. If this has been helpful, hit like. If it's been really rubbish, also hit like, and leave a comment in the comments. That's where you do the comments, calling me whatever the Romanian word for a potato is. Go and check that out. Anyway, thank you and goodbye.